The Tribal Chief Roman Reigns and the King of Strong Style Shinsuke Nakamura have a really weird and assorted history that never made any sense. Unlike most feuds that have a clear trajectory, these two have gone at it in an almost start and stop kind of fashion. And this weird history really seems even stranger when you stop to lay it all out. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Because today...
Thank you to all the wonderful supporters out there who support me over on Patreon, like True Sinister and The Reflection of Perfection. To find out how to get your own Patreon shout out, please go over and check out my Patreon page.
With Nakamura recently just turning heel again and his program with Seth Rollins really not landing all that well, it's safe to say that WWE Creative really doesn't know what they're doing with the King of Strong Style. Now clearly, Shinsuke is an investment, one that WWE should be trying to maximize, but at the same time, he does have certain shortcomings when it comes to the creative process. And after these years in WWE and considering his age, it does seem like the Nakamura shtick has kinda run its course. But even still, most of his fiercest fans still believe that he does deserve main event status and that he even could be WWE champion. But if we're to base that decision off of Shinsuke's interactions with WWE's Golden Boy, the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns, well, we'll say that really doesn't look like it's going to be the case, at least not anytime soon. You know what? Let's start at the beginning.
Let's take things back to January of 2016, because this is when Shinsuke Nakamura announced that he would be leaving New Japan and that he would be joining WWE's NXT brand. Now before this, the mere idea of Shinsuke Nakamura squaring off against Roman Reigns was unthinkable, but alas now the wheels were in motion to make this a distinct possibility. And then just 2 years later, after a successful run in NXT, we would get the first encounter between both of these men, as the finals of that year's Royal Rumble came down to a battle between the young and the old, with Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, and John Cena going face to face with Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Roman Reigns. These six eventually whittled down to just Nakamura and Roman, with the hostile Philadelphia crowd expecting yet another win for the big dog that of course they didn't want. However, lo and behold, it would be Shinsuke Nakamura to take down the W. Yup, that's right, this was the first time that Roman and Nakamura shared a ring together, and Shinsuke was victorious. Immediately after winning in a rare move, Nakamura was asked who would he be facing off against at WrestleMania, and much to many people's delight, Nakamura simply replied, AJ Styles. Now the funny thing here is, while fans were eagerly anticipating him to say AJ Styles, the truth is Nakamura had history with both champions at the time, not just AJ, because the other champion was that of Brock Lesnar. But even with that being the case, the WWE audience was more familiar with and more eager to see Nakamura recreate his epic Wrestle Kingdom 10 showdown with the Phenomenal One. However, that isn't what they got. This match was very temporarily billed as if it was going to be the main event of WrestleMania, but that didn't last too long, as it soon became quite clear that WWE was going ahead with Roman and Lesnar, even though their WrestleMania 31 main event really didn't move the needle as much as they had hoped.
And as it turned out, both matches sucked, with Nakamura's match against AJ resulting in Nakamura going heel, which is the first time he did that in WWE. And suffice to say, this is a formula that they're repeating yet again with Nakamura right now. Although back then, you could argue that this wasn't the worst thing to happen to Nakamura, as his heel turn would eventually lead to a WWE Intercontinental Championship reign, and during that time, he would have to defend it against, well, a familiar customer.
Almost 2 years after their encounter at the Royal Rumble, both men wouldn't meet inside the squared circle again until October 18th, 2019, but this time it would be for a championship, the Intercontinental title to be exact, as the then reigning champion Shinsuke Nakamura would put his belt up for grabs against that of Roman Reigns. And this happened on an episode of Friday SmackDown, which took place in Indianapolis, Indiana, and this time around it would be the future Tribal Chief that would come out on top, as he won via disqualification when the then King Corbin got involved, continuing his feud with that of Reigns. This would result in a tag team match playa, as Nakamura and Corbin would team up to go against Roman Reigns and his partner Daniel Bryan, and in this match, Roman's team would be the victors, giving Reigns 2 victories over Nakamura in the same night. Then, on the following week's episode of SmackDown, Roman would win another tag team match against Nakamura, as he, Chad Gable, and Mustafa Ali would defeat that of Cesaro, King Corbin, and Shinsuke. And we're still not done yet, because just 6 6 days later, and Roman, Ali, and Gable would also team up with Rusev and Ricochet as part of Team Hogan for the WWE Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia, and they would go against that of Team Flair, which featured Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, Randy Orton, and of course Shinsuke Nakamura. And yup, Team Hogan would win, thus giving Roman Reigns yet another victory.
Now, the two men would get to compete against each other yet again in two massive tag team matches on the New Year's Revolution house show. However, this was not televised, and furthermore, Roman Reigns would also win this one as well.
Then, 2 years after their first encounter, and Nakamura and Reigns would finally be a part of the same Royal Rumble yet again, although neither man would win. And then that brings us to our most recent televised match between both Roman Reigns and Shinsuke Nakamura, as it was an 11-minute and 6-second match that happened on WWE's Tribute to the Troops in October of 2021. And what should come as no surprise, the Tribal Chief, of course, was the winner.
And for me, this match right here is the most surprising part about it. Not so much that it happened, just how weirdly quiet the whole affair was. I mean, think about it, this was a champion versus champion match, and it's not often that we get to see the WWE title holder as well as the Intercontinental Champion going against each other. But alas, many fans have forgotten that this match ever took place, and when there are many people out there who have complained that Roman Reigns has run out of opponents during his Tribal Chief run, we should remember that Nakamura was a perfectly good candidate, and they could have used him as such. But to really put a question mark and an exclamation point on this whole thing, I should point out that this was not the last time these two men interacted. Now yes, they did have a dark tag match before an episode of SmackDown, but that's not what I'm talking about. Instead, I'm talking about the time where they hugged.
Shinsuke Nakamura and Roman Reigns would meet in the ring again, but for a segment rather than a match. During the SmackDown that happened after WrestleMania 38, Nakamura would confront the Bloodline, as he just had a match against the Usos where he teamed up with his partner Rick Boogs, who unfortunately would be injured during that bout. But before the King of Strong Style could get a word out, Roman would tell him that he sympathizes, and that the Island of Relevancy is a place of love, only for this to turn into the Tribal Chief's version of a mafia kiss, with the Usos kicking Nakamura for his troubles.
And it would seem as if Nakamura is just as confused by this angle as the rest of us were. While some could make the argument that this was putting a bow on the feud with the Usos, even though Boog's injury probably should have done that, it does to me come across more so like they're setting up a feud against Roman Reigns, and a proper feud at that. But since that happened over a year ago, clearly that is not the case. Okay, so now that we have the whole thing all laid out, you see just how bizarre this whole thing really is.
But the worst part as far as I'm concerned is that this is just indicative of how poorly they've used Shinsuke Nakamura over his time on the main roster. Sure, his heavy accent does limit the amount of things you could do with him since you can't use promos in order to further a story, and the shine from his unique style does wear off if it's overexposed. But all the same, this is very similar to another wrestler who could tell us a lot about what to do with Shinsuke Nakamura, and that wrestler is Rob Van Dam. While RVD is quite capable on the microphone, when he was in WWE, they barely let him talk. However, his unique moveset worked to get him over with the fans, despite how much Shawn Michaels and Triple H tried to keep him down. And this would result in him eventually becoming WWE champion, even if that title reign had to come to a close thanks to a certain incident. And also, just like Nakamura, Rob had a following from a previous company that helped him gain a lot of fandom once he was in WWE. And just like Nakamura, Rob Van Dam also tried to revisit an old feud, only to have it fall short of the original. But even with all that, I think this lays out a fantastic blueprint of what WWE could have done with Nakamura, and dare I say, even improve upon the design. Now, I will admit that RVD has much more staying power than Shinsuke does, but to counter that, I would say add a few more impressive maneuvers to Nakamura's arsenal, or just use him way more sparingly. And as AJ Styles put it, fan expectation for the match between him and Shinsuke Nakamura was way too high, as people were thinking that it was going to be just like their match from 2 years prior in New Japan, when there was no way that that was going to happen. So instead of using this as Nakamura's potential crowning moment, I think this feud would have been better saved till after Nakamura wins the belt, if of course that is the route we decide to go in. And if we do, I say just like Rob Van Dam, it would be great if Shinsuke Nakamura could use his guaranteed WWE title shot against an unloved baby babyface who's been shoved down our throats and has held the championship way too much. But instead of John Cena, Shinsuke could do it against Roman Reigns. And this makes a lot of sense when we remember that even AJ Styles himself first won over many WWE fans who were unfamiliar with him by outworking the big dog. And for me, just looking at this simple pattern and working with what history has already given us, well, that just makes a lot more sense to me than what actually happened.
Well, there you go, the bizarre history of Shinsuke Nakamura and Roman Reigns. But why do you think this feud has been so clunky, and what would you have done to fix it? Let me know down in the comments, and please make sure you give this video a big like, and that you're also subscribed to the Thinking Fans channel, as this is the place for thinking fans. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all my amazing Patreon supporters. And as always, Dave knows.